Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host, as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we are back for another week to break down UFC on ESPN Plus 6 from Nashville, Tennessee. John, how are you doing tonight, bro?
How you doing, man? I'm very well. I know you had some talk on this card on Twitter today, but as always, man, I'm looking forward to breaking it down. On paper, it may not be the greatest card name-wise, but the thing we love about this sport is you never know what you're going to get come fight night. So that's why we always tune in, man.
Yeah, I've seen the same comments, man, about how it's substandard, etc. But honestly, 9 times out of 10, and you've just alluded to it too, these types of cards are the ones that deliver from an entertainment perspective. I always look forward to the UFC fight cards, and, Saturday night will be no different. But just before we start, I'd just like to remind you all that the Premium Bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available, and on the Newsome MMA website, you have the options of a standard, bronze, silver, and gold membership, and these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card for those that commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. Now, I am going to be running a cool offer over the next couple of weeks that I'm not going to disclose publicly yet, but if you're listening to this and you want to grab one of my premium packages, spoiler alert, till the end of 2019 for a nice discounted rate, then just drop me a DM, drop me a message on YouTube, any of my social channels, email adam@newsomemma.co.uk if you have to, and I'll talk to you about that offer right now. So let's break down some fights. UFC Nashville from bottom to top, and in the first fight of the night we've got Eric Shelton versus Jordan Espinosa. Now this is a fight I'm really looking forward to be honest. Eric Shelton is a fighter that I struggle to get a read on most of the time. He's got decent stand-up, he's got a decent wrestling game, decent top control, he's very well-rounded, and, training at American Top Team as well, I think, over the past couple of fights, he seems to be evolving and looking better, but it's the inconsistency that's concerned me in his past fights. I'm starting to be a little more sure what I'm going to get from him from fight to fight now, but from previous fights, it was very hit and miss, and I'm just waiting to see that run of 2, 3, 4 fights of consistency, even if it's not a 2, 3, 4 win streak, just a consistently decent performances. Good fighters can lose fights. Yeah. It is what it is, but it's the performances that he was losing in that he just looked pretty bad and quite lost in the cage. And it's those types of performances that I just want to see eradicated from his game. But Jordan Espinosa, man, is no slouch whatsoever. The dude's coming from the Dana White Contender Series. He's quick, he's explosive, he's wild, he's got an arsenal of a variety of attacks in his arsenal. He's just a very, very fun guy to watch. Now, his downfall to his game is he packs everything into everything, and it does take a hit on his cardio, even at this, the lower weight divisions. It can take a hit on his cardio. We have seen it in the past, but it doesn't get to a point where he's not functional and he'll lose a fight because of it. It just gets to a point where he does start letting his opponent take over. But like I say, he's not completely unfunctional. He does still move, he does still throw. It's just I tell you what it reminds me a lot of, the Benito Lopez, the fight that I sort of broke down with him and Manny Bermudez before that fight. Benito Lopez is the same. He throws everything into everything early on, and it's detrimental to him because it does slow him down later in the fights. And Jordan Espinosa is a lot like that. Now, I think Jordan Espinosa is going to start really well in this fight. I think he's potentially going to win round 1. I think he's probably going to start to win round 2, unless Shelton can get him down, get him on his back, and nullify that wild nature of Espinosa. But again, Espinosa is a good scrambler. He's decent on the mat himself. This is why I just tend to think that Espinosa is going to win the early stages of the fight. But if he's wild, then I see his cardio taking a hit. I think Shelton will start to take over the fight. I think Shelton will do enough in round 2. I think he'll do enough in round 3 to take the fight via decision. If Espinosa is more patient, a lot calmer and not wild, then I think that will play into Shelton's game as well. So I just see whichever way this fight's going, I think Shelton will either do well throughout the entire fight or at least take over towards the latter stages of the fight to win via decision. I'm going to trust that Shelton's got a bit of consistency about him, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is one of the fights on the card that I'm actually quite intrigued by because, as you mentioned, they're two good guys, but and Eric Shelton's record doesn't really do him justice. I know, obviously, he won that close split decision against Joseph Morales in his last fight, and that probably saves his job in the UFC as well because obviously we know what they're doing with flyweights, and if he'd have lost 4 out of 5, then I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about him this evening. But yeah. For me, from what I've seen of Espinosa as well, this is a fight between two quite similar styles. I mean, they're both good on their feet. They've got good striking. They mix in takedowns well. I know that Shelton nearly got caught a couple of times in guillotines against Morales, but he managed to scramble his way out. And yeah, they mix them in well to keep their opponent on their toes and always guessing. But as you alluded to, Espinosa, from what I've seen, he does like to empty the tank pretty early, and he did look pretty tired in the later rounds against Riley Dutrow, but that also didn't stop him and his power. He knocked Dutrow down a couple of times in the third round before eventually winning it with just a couple of seconds left on the clock in the final round. So he does still hold that power throughout the fight. And what I saw in that matchup with Dutrow is that he's got a very nice left hook. When the opponent steps in, he lands that left hook clean and gets out of there pretty quickly. So I'm quite intrigued to see how this plays out. But I'm with you on this one. I do think Shelton is going to take it. I do think he's got the slight edge in his overall game. I think, like you mentioned, if Espinosa does empty the tank early and tires, I think Shelton will be able to pick him apart and just land the more punches in the second and third round. Obviously, Shelton has been there and done it before in the UFC as well, whereas Espinosa's coming in making his debut. We always mention that, and we don't always know how fighters will react to that UFC debut under the bright lights. So for those reasons, yeah, I'm going to take Shelton, but it is going to be a fun fight, and I think I can see it being pretty even throughout the entirety of the 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty tight come the scorecards. But yeah, I've got a Shelton edge in this one, so I'm going with Eric Shelton to win by decision.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got newcomer stepping in on short notice, Ryan MacDonald versus Chris Gutierrez. Now, this fight, Chris Gutierrez opened on the betting line at +125, which for me is absolutely crazy from what I've seen on tape. Now, Ryan MacDonald, like I say, is a young guy stepping in on short notice, being given that opportunity, 10-0. So from a bookie's perspective, I can see that's really attractive and it looks great, but honestly, not all is what it seems with Ryan MacDonald. The dude may be 10-0, but the guys he's beaten are very, very poor level of opposition. You know, I don't mean any disrespect, but they just are. Matt Murphy, 7-9. Yeah. He has a 3-33 boxing record as well. Chad Obermiller, yes, he's 10-8, but he was a 38-year-old when they last fought. Tim Baser, 16-9. He's got 0-0s, 0-2s. He's been knocked out twice as an amateur. He's also lost a decision as an amateur as well. I think Ryan MacDonald is definitely one to look out for in the future. He's got skills. I'm not saying he's a jobber or anything like that. I think that he's definitely got skills and he's definitely going to improve. His sort of game set is, strike, stay coming forward, but keep a little bit of space. He's got quite a flowy style with putting combinations together whilst moving forward and keeping that little bit of distance. But moving backwards is where he struggles. He also looks for opportunistic takedowns, but again, the takedowns that I've seen him shoot on the opponents, they've offered zero resistance. So no backing up to the cage, wide stances, trying to dig underhooks in. They've just sort of flopped on the back the second that MacDonald shot in for something. So how good his takedown offense is still remain to be seen. So like I say, I like his style moving forward, but I just don't think he's ready for the UFC yet. And again, I don't mean any disrespect. He might come out here and he might win this fight, and again, he might prove me wrong. I've said this previously about other fighters. One that springs to mind is Laureano Starapoli for UFC Argentina. But the difference is with Starapoli, and I also said it about Nordiev as well, is those two guys, Starapoli and Nordiev, they had 2 years between when their UFC debut and when they fought before that. Ryan MacDonald has been fighting regularly, fought twice last year, I believe. So it's not as if MacDonald's had this time off where he's really just zoned and honed in on his skills and looked to improve in every area. I think that we see from Ryan MacDonald what we've seen from him last year, which, like I say, I just don't think he's ready right now in the UFC to beat someone like Chris Gutierrez. He may win fights in the UFC right now. Gutierrez is different though, man. Gutierrez is obviously he's had his debut in the UFC against Raoni Barcelos, which is going to be a tough fight for anybody, but he actually did pretty well in that fight, cut Barcelos up badly, but ultimately Barcelos' aggression and pressure got to him. Ray Rodriguez in LFA, Jimmy Flick, Timur Valiev. I know he's lost to Valiev as well. They fought twice, but these are all legitimate guys, legitimate quality of opposition that he's been fighting, and I just don't think, like I said, I just don't think Ryan MacDonald is there yet. I think MacDonald is, like I say, he's vulnerable moving backwards. He doesn't really offer a lot moving backwards. So if Gutierrez is going forwards, which I imagine him to, he's got a really nice Muay Thai game. He uses teep kicks to the knees. He's got really awkward movement. He can keep that distance if he needs to. If MacDonald does get a bit aggressive, but ultimately I think the quality of the striking will allow Gutierrez to keep pushing forward. I then think we start seeing MacDonald try and shoot for desperate takedowns. Gutierrez can be taken down. We have seen it before, obviously against Barcelos, but he's got decent takedown defense, and he's going to offer a resistance and a resilience to getting taken down than what MacDonald's seen before with his previous level of competition. So I just think MacDonald is going to see a lot of new things here, and the step up, I'm telling you now, the step up from someone like Matt Murphy, who's 7-9, who he got dropped twice by the way, before Matt Murphy quit on the stool between the second and third round, is just that level of that step up from someone like Matt Murphy to Gutierrez is unbelievable, and I just think that MacDonald's going to take that first L, which might be great for him, and I think it will be great for him. He's going to learn a lot from this fight, win or lose. I don't see MacDonald winning this fight. So I've got Chris Gutierrez to win, and I think he's going to stop him late as well. So I've got Chris Gutierrez to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. John, who have you got?
Yeah, you've kind of took the words right out of my mouth for this one. I was quite excited to see what Ryan MacDonald's had to offer when I saw that he was brought in 10-0, and then I started looking on the tape index, Newsome MMA tape index, just throwing a little plug in there. And yeah, man, I was like, I watched that fight against Matt Murphy, and I wasn't impressed. I mean, like you mentioned, Matt Murphy was 7-9 at the time of them fighting, and yeah, Murphy lit him up a bit, man, and MacDonald kind of he didn't really circle off when he on any of his strikes, and he was quite linear, moving just forwards and backwards, and Murphy was landing with some heavy shots on him, and like you say, he even knocked him down twice and came close to finishing the fight. MacDonald did look okay on his feet. I mean, he looked, from what I could see, looked like he did overextend on his punches and overcommitted slightly on occasions, which sometimes led to him being caught by Murphy. But yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, I haven't seen a great deal of him. I saw, like I mentioned, the Matt Murphy fight, and I saw some of his one of his earlier fights. It might have been the Obermiller fight, or if I remember correctly. But yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with him. And yeah, it could be just a step too soon to come into the UFC at this stage of his career. As you mentioned, Gutierrez has fought in the UFC before against Barcelos, and he had a decent first round. Obviously, he got taken down in the second round and got beaten up a bit on the ground. Eventually, gave up his back and was submitted. But he looked decent in the first round, and he landed some nice shots on Barcelos. And yeah, unless MacDonald has done something drastic since his last win, which was in which he just competed, which was in September of last year, I don't think his skill set is quite there yet to be at this level. And as you mentioned, maybe taking that first L will and just this experience of competing under the bright lights of the UFC will be good for his career and give him an idea of where he needs to step up his game. But yeah, from what I've seen, I just can't see a way for MacDonald to win this. He doesn't move his head enough for me. Like I say, he's linear, moves back in a straight line, gets caught with shots, and yeah, I just think Gutierrez is going to land on him. I think he's the better striker. I am going to take Gutierrez to finish the fight as well. As we mentioned, MacDonald got caught by Murphy, could have been finished. I think that Gutierrez will land on him because he's a far better mixed martial artist than what I saw from Matt Murphy. So yeah, for that reason, I'm going with Gutierrez to win this by TKO in the second round.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Randa Markos versus Angela Hill. Now, this is a fight that I'm really looking forward to, actually. I love a striker versus grappler fight. And this is exactly what it is. Randa Markos, as we know, will always look to try and close the distance, try and drag her opponents down to the mat. And Angela Hill, on the opposite side, is a pretty fluid striker. You know, she's got good skills. She works a Muay Thai well, kicks up and down the body, looks to be aggressive when she can. Now the problem is in this fight for Angela Hill is she can't be overly aggressive, because the second that she gets overly aggressive, she's going to be doing Randa Markos's job for her, which is closing the distance, and you know, that's not gonna end well for her. Now, yeah, I actually think both of these women's records don't reflect the quality of the fighters themselves. Now, I'm not saying that they will beat us, but I genuinely think that they've got decent skills to beat most women in the division, you know. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out, because we predominantly see Angela Hill do well going forward. So we have seen her look a little less efficient moving backwards. It's going to be interesting how she plays it. She's going to have to fight backwards. She's going to have to angle, exit if she wants to win this fight. The bottom line is, can Markos get her down, and can she get her down over at least 2 rounds? Because the first round is always dangerous when you fight Markos, but she does slow down as the fights go on, and we've seen this multiple times. And actually, it's one of the reasons why she loses some of the decisions that's on her record, you know. I think it's going to be tough for Markos, but I think it's a close fight that she's probably going to edge on the scorecards. I think she is going to be able to get a hold of Angela Hill, which is what she needs to do. I think once she's a hold of Hill, I think she's going to be stronger. I think she's going to have more aggression about her. I think she is going to be able to put Hill down and stay on top of her for, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, if need be, enough to win the round that she does that in. But I think if Markos gets off to a good start, Hill's going to recognise that she's down on the scorecards, and I just think that naturally Hill is going to end up coming forward trying to really put it on Markos, and like I say, that plays directly into the hands of Randa Markos. So I think Markos is going to end up taking a very, very close decision, and like I say, I think she's going to win on the scorecards. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this one makes it the hat trick for us. I'm also going with Randa Markos in this one, and as you mentioned, the problem with this fight for Hill is she the moment she gets aggressive and starts throwing her hands or going for one of the trademark kicks, then that's the opportunity for Markos to close the distance. So I think a lot of time. And in this fight we spent with Markos pushing Hill up against the cage and just grinding on her. maybe getting the takedown, like you mentioned, holding him down for 30 seconds. Then the heel gets back to her feet, but still in the clinch, and just a rinse and repeat process. And we have seen that Markos has struggled in fights that she can't get her opponent to the ground. Like we saw that in the Nina Antarov fight. Antarov was too strong for her. Takedown defense was too good, and Markos didn't really have a plan B in that fight. But for me, I don't think he'll, unless her movement is on point and she really point fights in this, just lands a jab, gets out of their circles off the fence, and again rinse and repeat that process. Then I think she's going to really struggle. I think Markos is going to be able to walk her down. Hill doesn't really have finishing power, so I don't think Markos will worry too much about just walking through those punches. And yeah, I just think Markos will just be the aggressor, be a bit of a bully. As I mentioned, just clinch her against the fence, take her down, keep wearing on her. Hill might get back to her feet, and the process will start all over again. And I think it's going to be a scrappy fight. But yeah, I'm going with Markos to win this. I think she'll do enough to edge it over the 3 rounds. If Hill can afford those takedowns, she will get the nod in this one. But I don't think she will be able to avoid them for long enough, and in each round I think Markos will get her down, hold her there for long enough, and get the nod in the judges' eyes.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Alexis Davis versus Jennifer Maia. Again, pretty much another striker versus grappler fight. Now, Davis is predominantly the grappler, and I think she's actually decent on the mat. You know, we've seen her look good from off her back. We've seen a sweep. We've seen reverse positions. Her jiu-jitsu's good. Jennifer Maia, on the other hand, is predominantly a boxer. She has got I think it's a 3-0 professional boxing record. You know, how much can you really take from that? I'm not too sure. You know, I don't really look into the boxing side of things. But like I say, I think it's going to be Jennifer Maia absolutely wanting to keep this fight standing, and it's going to be Alexis Davis that should look to get the fight to the mat. Now, the reason I worry about Alexis Davis in this fight is because in a last fight against Caitlin Chookagian, a fight that I actually bet Chookagian in, I was worried betting Chookagian that Alexis Davis would look to try and get her down to the mat and really start working Chookagian, but actually she stayed on the feet for the majority of that fight, and she didn't do too badly against Chookagian. She ended up losing the decision, but Chookagian's a decent striker, and Alexis Davis did hold her own, but I just don't think her striking is at the level of Jennifer Maia, and I feel that in this fight, if she does the same thing that she did against Chookagian, she's going to end up in the same position again. If she just stays hanging on the feet for too long, whether she's coming forward, being aggressive, or whether she's on the back foot, I just think she's going to slowly have that fight pulling away on the scorecards against her, which is ultimately where I think the fight is going to go. She's got to try and look to get the fight to the mat if she wants to give herself the best possible chance of winning this fight. But I think Jennifer Maia is going to be able to defend the takedowns quite well. I don't think Alexis Davis's wrestling is overly amazing. You know, it's decent. She can get her opponents to the mat, but where we've seen Alexis Davis look good on the mat before, like I said, sweeping, transitioning, reversing, that sort of thing. If you listen to the context of that description I've just mentioned of a ground game, it's all defensive, which means that her opponents are the ones that have initiated the wrestling, got on top of her, and then she's done well. I think Jennifer Maia is going to do well in this fight. I think she's going to be able to strike moving forward, strike moving backwards if need be. I think she's going to be able to work her angles well, and I think the strike. I think she's just going to keep Alexis Davis on the end of her strikes. I can see Davis getting a couple of takedowns in this fight, but I don't think it's going to be enough to affect the decision if it should hit the scorecards, which, like I've already mentioned, I think it will. So for that reason, I think Jennifer Maia is just going to put the volume on her. I think she's going to look the better over the 3 rounds. The fight, I believe, is going to be won and lost on the feet, so I'm taking Jennifer Maia to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is this is quite a tough fight to pick, and I've been umming and ahhing over who I think is going to come out on top. And yeah, Jennifer Maia really needs to use the Chukagian blueprint for how to beat Alexis Davis. Just movement. Chukagian kept her on the end of her punches, and although Alexis Davis pressured her for the entirety of the 15 minutes, she didn't really get anywhere near close enough for a takedown throughout the fight. She didn't really attempt any takedowns. It was just predominantly a striking match. And although Davis held her own, she threw some nice combinations. She mixed in the leg kicks quite frequently, and yeah, she just couldn't get inside and do what she does best, which is take the fight to the mat and work her grappling. And yeah, if Maia does. If the fight plays out in any kind of way that the Chukagian fight did, then Maia's going to win this fight because, again, like you mentioned, she's the better striker. Davis is a bit less technical on the feet. Maia, obviously, you mentioned coming from that boxing background, although it's only a small number of fights professionally. She does have a good boxing base. And yeah, as long as she can keep this fight standing, Maia will come out on top with the decision. We did see Maia get taken down against Liz Carmouche. Obviously, Carmouche fought against Alexis Davis in Davis' previous fight to the Chukagian fight, and Davis was victorious in that. But as we all know, MMA math doesn't work, and we shouldn't really base our decisions around that. Ultimately, I think the fight is going to play out how you've described it. I do think Maia is going to be able to box Davis up on the feet, keep her at the end of her jab, and like I say, as long as she doesn't plant those feet and allow Davis to duck underneath and initiate the wrestling and the grappling exchanges, then Maia will come out victorious. Now if Maia does plant those feet, if she gives Davis the opportunity to take the fight to the mat, then she's going to struggle, because I didn't see a lot off her back against Carmouche that filled me with hope that she'll be able to get back to her feet against Davis either. So yeah, she, like I mentioned, she needs to use Chukagian's blueprint, stick and move with the jabs, the 1-2s, don't overcommit on any strikes, just keep moving, keep circling off the cage. I'm sure Alexis Davis will try to pressure her the way that she did with Chukagian, but yeah, as long as she keeps a sensible range and doesn't overcommit on any of the strikes, I think Maia will be able to keep the fight standing and get the decision win.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Frankie Saenz versus Marlon Vera. Now, this fight was initially scheduled to take place at UFC 235. Unfortunately, the fight was cancelled due to Marlon Vera being pulled from the card. I think it was nothing serious. I think he was ill or something through fight week, and his weight cut he was struggling with, and I think it was a doctor's decision to pull him from the card, something along those sort of lines. But they've rebooked it straight away anyway, due to the fact that it wasn't, in any serious nature. And as I mentioned, my breakdown and my decision from that UFC 235 podcast hasn't changed at all. I still think Frankie Saenz is going to win this fight. Again, as I previously mentioned when I was watching tape on it, prior to that tape, I didn't think too much of Frankie Saenz, but actually watching tape, he's quite a savvy veteran. He moves better than I thought he moved. His boxing is crisper and more accurate than I thought it was. He doesn't keep his head on the centre line. Like I say, he's mobile. He does move angles out, side to side, in and out of range nicely. He's got a solid chin. He's got good cardio. He's got a good wrestling background as well. He doesn't like get relentless or desperate with his wrestling and his takedowns. He will shoot when the opportunity presents itself, which I kind of like. I love a relentless wrestler, someone like Colby Covington, for example, but I also like the type of wrestler that can strike, knowing that the opportunity will come and he doesn't need to go hunting for it and rushing for it. Marlon Vera, on the other hand, is a finisher. He's an exciting fighter. Ultimately, though, if he doesn't finish the fight, he does find himself losing on the scorecards more often than not. He finds himself losing rounds, and it's fundamentals that tend to get the better of Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera flourishes against electric fighters, flashy fighters that want to come in there and basically do what he does. But when the fighter, like I say, has got good fundamentals, sound boxing, sound wrestling, someone like Frankie Saenz, I just think that that's where he can be got at, and that's where Frankie Saenz can start taking over the fight, especially late on. I think as all Marlon Vera, well, most Marlon Vera fights go, well, wins go, I think he's got to finish Saenz to win this fight. Now, he could probably catch Saenz's back off a scramble or something like that if Saenz shoots him for a takedown, but I don't see him knocking Saenz out. Saenz is tough, man. He's not gonna wear him out either. Like I've already mentioned, Saenz has got good cardio. He can go 3 rounds no problem. I feel that the biggest path to victory for Vera is the submission, taking the back. And again, Saenz is a savvy veteran. He's not just gonna give up his back just like that. He's really gonna have to make Vera work if he wants this win. But I think Frankie Saenz is going to win this fight. I said it last time. I still believe it this time. Interestingly enough, the betting line on Saenz is much worse, as in it's closer to a pick'em than it is to Saenz being a wide underdog than it was at UFC 235. So I don't know whether other people have had that same opinion after sort of analysing the fight and listening to other content sources, but more people think Saenz is going to win this fight than they did last time for sure, and I think he gets it done by decision. So I've got Frankie Saenz to win, and I'm taking to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, as with you, I'm not changing my pick either from the last podcast when we broke this down, and I'm going with Marlon Vera to win it. I just think that obviously, as I mentioned before in the previous podcast, Frankie Saenz is 38 years old now. I know he doesn't look like he's particularly slowing down, but it's been almost 12 months since he last fought, and at these lighter weight classes, I mean, time can catch up with you really quickly. I mentioned before, Marlon Vera is the bigger, longer fighter. I like his arsenal of strikes as well. He'll use kicks and those long jabs, long 1-2s on the outside. As soon as the fight comes in close and they get on the inside, he'll use knees, he'll use elbows in the clinch, etc. And he can pull a fight back from anywhere as well, as we saw with Luigi Buren. He lost the first round in that, but came back to win with a nasty body shot. And then against Guido Canetti as well, he finished it with a nice rear naked choke in the second round. And I just think Marlon Vera's got too many tools to win this fight. I think he, not necessarily boxing, but overall striking, I think he's better. I think he'll utilise his kicks. Like I mentioned, he'll be able to keep Saenz at range with the kicks, the front kick, and like I mentioned, the 1-2s. If the fight hits the mat, he's got good scrambles, he's got good submissions. He can pop up and take you back and lock on a choke or a submission, and I just think he's got too many tools in the arsenal to get past Frankie Saenz, and I predict him to finish Saenz in the when we broke it down previously for UFC 235, and I'm going to go with the same again. I do think he will catch him with something. I think the second round he tends to take a couple of rounds to suss his opponents out, get his timing down, kickstart himself as well. He is a slow starter, but once he does get into gear, he's dangerous, and that's when he does start unleashing his full arsenal of strikes and submissions and etc. So I think he's going to catch Saenz with something as Saenz walks in, maybe like a step-in elbow or something like that, or I wouldn't be surprised if we saw one of those body shots that we saw against Buren. He mixes them in really nicely, and I just think he'll catch Saenz with something that'll wobble him, and then he'll flurry and either get the finish with strikes or while Saenz is turtled up or drops and gives up his back. I can see him jumping on some kind of choke. I'm going with Marlon Vera to win this fight. I'm going to win via stoppage in the second round.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Bryce Mitchell, returning Bryce Mitchell versus Bobby Moffett. Now, I've started giggling, so have you. For those that don't know, Bryce Mitchell's coming back from probably one of the worst injuries I've I can ever recall
Horrendous.
of any sport. What I'm going to do quickly, just for those that don't know, or just for those that want reminding of how funny this is. Well, it's not funny, it's actually pretty gruesome, but you'll have a good laugh. Is I'm just going to read you the tweet from back in August from Bryce Mitchell's account. So it says, "So I was going to train today, but I ripped my nutsack in half. I'm about to get stitched up. I was holding a board over my head with a drill in my pants. I was sizing up the board and the drill went off and tangled my nuts up in it.
Oh,
I dropped the board and
man.
reversed the drill and untangled my nutsack. But they was ripped in half. Man, I don't know if I can carry on. I'm
Brilliant.
serious too. I obviously can't post a picture. But but when my nuts are sealed back up, I'm going to come train again. This is unbelievable. I think a high kick would re-rip them, and if I hear any shitty puns about how this is nutty or screwed up, I ain't gonna talk to you for about a month." And then he put straight after, "I'm gonna be out for a little bit," and then put a picture of his boxers that he was wearing at the time, and that's a horrible picture.
Yeah, they're all bloodied up, weren't they? Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's funny, man. That
At least you
he's
could,
horrible.
make a joke about it.
Yeah, you can joke about it now. He's okay. He's all right. He's back in the fight. He's back in the UFC, and he's got a great fight lined up against Bobby Moffett. So that's exactly what it's going to be, man. Primarily, they're both wrestlers. They both can strike too. Aggressive, like to come forward, like to close that distance, to get a hold of each other, to put one another, well, to put their opponents on the mat. In this case, it is going to be one another because I think they're both going to spend time on top. I think they're both going to spend time on the back. I think we're going to see some wild scrambles as well. It's tough to really see who's got the wrestling edge in this fight because initially I thought Bobby Moffett would, but looking back at Bryce Mitchell's fight with Tyler Diamond, which again was that's a very similar fight to how this is going to play out. And yeah, Bryce Mitchell looked great, especially late on in that fight, landing takedowns, having a lot of success in top control and really, grinding Tyler Diamond out. And Tyler Diamond wasn't an easy guy to do that to either, and just like Bobby Moffett isn't either. Now, I am siding with Bobby Moffett in this fight slightly, and the reason being is I'm sure the dude was a BJJ practitioner before he even entered MMA, so I think, although I'm unsure of sort of where the wrestling edge is going to sit in this fight, I believe the grappling edge is going to sit with Bobby Moffett, and I think ultimately that's going to be the game changer, because when either guy's taken down, it's going to, opposed to actually looking at what the guy on top's going to do, I think it's going to be really crucial to what the guy on bottom does. And I just think the guy that's going to be able to perform better on bottom, or potentially have more success in sweeps and reverses, I think is Bobby Moffett. I really like the gym and the camp that Bobby Moffett's got around him as well, with the MMA lab. So he's got some really good guys there to train with. I just think he's going to edge it. Do you know what? I'm not sure whether he's going to grab a late submission either. Bobby Moffett's got a really underrated BJJ game. He could definitely catch a submission. I'm going to give Bryce Mitchell the benefit of the doubt here, because he is scrambling, he is awkward to keep down and keep in position, which ultimately 9 times out of 10 is what you need to do in order to finish a submission. Maybe not to grab it, but to finish it. I think Bryce Mitchell's going to be a little bit too awkward to finish. I don't rule it out, but I'm going to take Bobby Moffett to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a tough one to call. As you mentioned, they're both good wrestlers, both got good scrambles. Obviously, Bobby Moffett, he came into the UFC off the Dana White's Contender Series. We get a nice Darce choke. Then he fought Chaz Skelly in his first fight, and I'm watching that fight back. I mean, Skelly lands some shots on Moffett, and it was a bit of a controversial finish as well, wasn't it? Because Chaz Skelly was adamant that he didn't go out in that fight. I mean, he if I remember rightly, he was on the bottom, and then he scrambled up off the with his feet and off the fence, and that's when Moffett locked in a darce choke, and he was tight, and Skelly was wincing, and he did kind of go pretty limp, or just still, should I say? But he was adamant that he was just controlling his breathing.
Can I intervene here as well? Because
of course,
the other thing that I didn't speak about this, but the one thing that really frustrated me about that entire situation is not that the referee got it wrong, which I believe he did get it wrong. That's my opinion. The thing that really frustrated me is when they looked back at the replay, it was the referee that was analysing the replay, and basically you could hear everything that the referee was saying, which is great. They had a mic on him, and he was just defending his own decision. He wasn't looking at the situation and analysing what was happening. Was he out? Was he not out? He was defending his actions that led him to believe that he was out, and that's something that was really frustrating. And I do feel for Chad Skelly in that fight. I feel he was hard done by.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that the UFC really needs to. I don't know if it's the UFC or the commission or how it works, but yeah, you shouldn't really be having the referee, like you say, look at his own decision just on his own as well, and with no kind of intervention, because as you said, it becomes a case where they probably think to themselves, "Oh shit, I've messed up here," but I don't want to admit that I've messed it up, because that'll cause all sorts of chaos. So I'm just going to try and defend why I've made that decision, and stick with the same decision. So yeah, that's something that does need to be looked at in the future. But yeah, going back to the fight at hand, it's going to be close. I think Bryce Mitchell edges the stand-up. He landed some shots on Tyler Diamond. He circled off quite nicely when Diamond was attacking, or when he threw strikes and he circled off at the end of the combination. As you alluded to, he took Tyler Diamond down, and Tyler Diamond, he's a decent wrestler. We saw that in the Ultimate Fighter season. So yeah, as long as he can, as you mentioned, if Moffett does get the takedown, as long as he can get those scrambles and get back to his feet relatively quickly without giving up his neck, because as I mentioned, Moffett has got 3 darce chokes in his last 3 fights. So obviously that's something that he's drilled down to a T. And yeah, as long as Bryce Mitchell can either sweep and get top control, or get back to his feet without giving up a neck or giving up his back, I think Bryce Mitchell's going to win this fight, and I think he is going to be able to get back to his feet. I don't think as you mentioned, he scrambles well. He's always moving. He's hard to pin down. And yeah, I think he's the better striker of the two. I think he just edges it in the stand-up, and for that reason, I'm going with the reverse decision to you. I'm going with Bryce Mitchell to win via decision.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Maycee Barber versus JJ Aldrich. Now, it's a good fight, this. Maycee Barber was making a debut against Hannah Cifers. Now, at the time, it's interesting because at the time we thought that Hannah Cifers had just been thrown to the wolves, and she was given to Maycee Barber to get Maycee Barber in that win column in the UFC and start propelling her up the ladder, up the rankings in the division. And watching Cifers' last fight against Polyana Viana, which she rightfully won, by the way, she looked good. She actually looked really good, which to me then displays how good Maycee Barber actually is, because Barber looked amazing in that fight. She was landing hard shots, hard elbows. She landed takedowns. The ground and pound was brutal. It was an absolute destruction of Hannah Cifers in that fight. And like I say, when you look at what Hannah Cifers has done against Polyana Viana, who in my opinion isn't a bad fighter either, it really does demonstrate how good Barber is. But so's JJ Aldrich. I think she's another fighter that a lot of people have overlooked in the past, including myself, But I don't think it was a wrongful overlooking. I just think she was quite new and quite green, raw in her MMA career. And you can see Aldrich has just improved fight by fight. Her hands are good, hand speed, boxing's crisp, movement's good. She recognises danger really well, in and out of range nicely. And I think that to an extent she's going to have success in this fight because of her striking pedigree, because of the nice fundamentals that she's got. But unless she can keep the striking moving backwards, the exiting, the angles, for 15 minutes, I think that Barber's going to end up getting to her specifically later on in the fight. I think at the start, if Barber's aggressive, which I imagine she will be, she will push forward. I think that Aldrich will be able to stick and move and exit an angle, but the more pressure that comes from Barber, the more Aldrich is going to have to move. The more you move, the more tired you get. A good example of that is the Zabit Magomedsharipov and Jeremy Stephens fight. Zabit has got great cardio. We've never seen him tired until he fought Stephens. And the reason he was tired is because Stephens was making him overwork. He was making him work backwards. He was making him work side to side. Keep making Zabit just want to stay out of the range of any power and of any technique that Stephens was going to throw at him. And that stuff does tire you. Like I said, it was evident in that Zabit fight. And I think a similar sort of approach from Maycee Barber in this fight can start to make JJ Aldrich tire a little bit later on in the fight. But Aldrich isn't a Zabit Magomedsharipov. She isn't that elusive. She hasn't got the wrestling to fall back on if need be, even if it's just to really shoot a takedown, just to present and pose some threat to stop that pressure coming in. And Zabit used that really well in that Stephens fight. The reason I'm mentioning that fight so much is because I just think that style versus style is quite relevant. But yeah, I think Maycee Barber is going to be more aggressive in this fight. I think she's going to land more. I think it's going to be quite a close fight early on, but I think the way Barber fights may tire Aldrich. I think we could see takedown attempts, which could make Aldrich hesitant as well. And I just think a variety of things, that in-cage adjustments and a variety of things that Maycee Barber possesses in her attack is going to really start getting to JJ Aldrich. I don't see her putting Aldrich away, I really don't, but I'm going to take Barber to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Maycee Barber back in action. As you mentioned, the Hannah Cifers fight now looks an even better win than we thought at the time. As you said, it looked like kind of just a bit of a gimme to get her up and started in the UFC. But as we saw with Cifers last fight, man, she's tough as nails, and she's a decent fighter, and yeah, so that win is even more impressive. JJ Aldrich is a good striker. I think she's got a black belt in. I think she's like a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and she's a black belt in karate, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I think early on in this fight, especially round 1, I think Aldrich might be able to maintain the distance and keep the fight pretty even on the scorecards through the striking. But as the fight wears on, I think it'll start to play, as you mentioned. I think Maycee Barber will be able to close the distance. Aldrich will be constantly backing up against the fence. When she does, Barber will clinch. She'll look for takedowns. She'll try and beat her up in the clinch, and if they separate, the whole process will start again. And Maycee Barber will constantly keep that pressure up. And yeah, as soon as you drop 10%, and the fatigue starts to set in, it makes it a lot more difficult to land anything of significance off your back foot, and it also makes it a lot more difficult to defend those takedowns. And I see this fight playing out very similarly to the Barber and Cifers fight. I think that Barber's got brutal ground and pound, and I think at some point in the second round, maybe early third, I think Barber will be able to get the fight to the mat. I think Aldrich will be tired because of the constant pressure from Barber. I think she'll be struggling to get back to her feet. Barber can land nasty ground and pound in the guard as well. And that's what I think she'll do. I think she'll land those heavy elbows again. And I think Aldrich will just be struggling to get up off the bottom, just won't be able to get back to her feet. And then eventually, I think after the relentless onslaught on the ground, I think the referee may jump in. I think we may see Maycee Barber get another finish in this fight. So I'm going with Maycee Barber to win via stoppage in the round number 3.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Luis Violent Bob Ross Pena versus Steven Peterson. Now, Luis Pena is a fighter that I'm really high on. He had a little bit of a disappointing fight his last time out. against Michael Trizano. Trizano's a decent guy. Again, fundamentals seems to be the main thing mentioned on this podcast. But yeah, Trizano's got good fundamentals, and ultimately, Violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena just struggled to really get his game going. There is an argument that he could have won that fight, and I see that argument for sure. But ultimately, I do think that Trizano just did enough. Now, I think Luis Pena is a prospect. I think he's still pretty green, as evident in his last fight. AKA, he's still developing. I do believe that his ceiling is high at 155 pounds at lightweight. Now, he's dropping down 10 pounds in this fight to featherweight.
Yeah.
And honestly, man, like, go and look at that dude weighing on the scales. Obviously, he hasn't weighed in this time yet. That'll be Friday. But go and watch his previous weigh-ins at 155 pound. The dude is extremely skinny, slim, and man, I do not know where those extra 10 pounds are going to come from. He looks like he has a brutal cut to lightweight as it is.
Yeah.
To featherweight, honestly, I've got no idea. I've never been so intrigued to watch a weigh-ins. I can't remember the last time I was this intrigued to watch a weigh-ins. I watched them all anyway, but I can't remember the last time where I was really dying just to see one fighter and how they weigh in, because I'm mystified to where these extra 10 pounds is going to come from with Pena now.
Yeah.
We could talk about styles and I'm not touching upon Peterson right now a lot. I will get to those things, but man, yeah, I don't know. I think I can't see him making the weight. Pena's really confident that he is, though. He said it in his last two fights that he wants to move down to featherweight, and every time he says he wants to move down, everybody else says the same thing. He's crazy. Where are those 10 pounds going to come from? And every single time, Pena's just like, don't worry about that. Let me worry about my weight. I'll get down. Just watch, etc., etc. I'm yet to be convinced, because, like I say, it's ludicrous. He's going to be a 6'3" featherweight. I don't get it. People call James Vick huge at lightweight for 6'3". This dude's going to be a 6'3" featherweight, and like I say, it remains to be seen what happens. Now, we all know what happens when a fighter cuts too much weight. So the chin can get a little bit worse. The cardio can get a little bit worse. The strength can get a little bit worse, because obviously they're not lifting as many weights because they're having to cut weight. So that does halt the strength. There's a misconception about how it's pretty much guaranteed that when you move down, you're a stronger fighter. That's not the case at all. We spoke about that with Tom Breeze last week. All facets of the physical game, for me, looking at the way the physique of Luis Pena right now, or as a lightweight, should I say, I think a lot of the facets of that physique is going to be detrimental to him down at featherweight. Now, the last thing that Luis Pena needs when he's cut a shitload of weight, where his chin could potentially be worse, where his cardio could potentially be affected, is an ugly, rugged dogfighter. That's the last thing that Pena needs moving down to featherweight. But what has he got?
Yeah.
He's got an ugly, grinding dogfighter in Steven Peterson. Yes, Peterson was a bantamweight moving up to featherweight, but look, he's reaping the rewards of moving up, which we've seen from many fighters over the last sort of 24 months, reap those same rewards moving up. Peterson's not a fighter I'm massively high on. I think he's hittable. I think he's got holes defensively, some big holes defensively. But what he does is he gets in your face. He never stops moving forward. If you hit him, that's fine. He'll move forward. If you drop him, that's fine. He'll get up. He'll move forward. He's got decent takedowns. He's experienced. He's an ex-LFA champion, I believe. The dude's won world titles in different promotions. He's been around the game, like I said. He's turning into a vet himself, but not a vet that's past it. He's at Factory X. He's still improving. He's got a good team around him, and man, I I think this is a horrible fight for Luis Pena. I really like the guy. I think he's a prospect. I think he's one to watch for the future. But I will be shocked if Pena A makes the 146 pound limit, and B, if he manages to stick with it over 15 minutes against somebody that's not going to stop come forward. He's going to be clinching, he's going to be grinding, he's going to be landing shots. I think Pena's going to have success early. I think he's going to fade late, and I think Peterson's going to get the win. So I've got Steven Peterson to win. I'm going to take him to win by decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I mean, you just covered it all with Luis Pena. He's a guy that I really like the looks of in the Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, he got injured in his bout there against Jose Martinez, and he had to pull out the rest of the tournament. Then he fought Richie Smullen in the finale, and he looked fantastic in that fight. I mean, locked on that guillotine in the first round and got the submission win against the guy who's a bit of a submission specialist as well in Smullen. But then it came to the Mike Trizano fight, and I was a bit disappointed. I was expecting more from Pena because I also am high on him, and I think he's got. I mean, his physique and stuff, like you say, at lightweight, he's fantastic. To be a 6'3" lightweight, you're going to have the height and reach advantage over basically everybody. But he didn't really use that against Trizano, and he didn't really utilise his kicks. So we know he's got an array of kicks in his arsenal. He didn't really use those to maintain distance or anything like that. When Trizano closed the distance, he was landing on Pena on the inside, and Pena would just shake his head and wag his fingers, saying, no, that didn't cause me any harm. But he was still getting caught with them over and over again, which obviously then swayed the judges to give Trizano the decision. One thing I also noticed in that fight with Trizano, I know that obviously Pena's fighting out of AKA now, very heavy wrestling gym. I feel like he was turning to that wrestling too often and kind of making it... Trizano's kind of telegraphing the wrestling and the takedowns, and Pena was kind of reaching in for a lot of takedowns without really setting them up properly, and hopefully going into this fight he will, if he does try to utilise that game plan again, he will try and set those takedown attempts up with strikes. But as you said, I don't know how he's physically going to cut down to featherweight. I mean, a 6'3" featherweight is crazy. I mean, the only other person I can remember that is anywhere remotely in a similar situation off the top of my head is George Root back in the day. He was pretty tall, and I'm sure he got down to possibly even bantamweight if I remember correctly. I can't think off the top of my head, but he definitely made it down to featherweight, and he was a tall guy. I'm not quite sure if he was 6'3" though, maybe 6'1", but yeah, I just don't know how he's going to do it, and he may have lost the fight on the day of the weigh-ins, like you mentioned, because it could take so much from him getting down to that weight that he just can't perform a featherweight. And for that reason, I'm going with you. I'm going with Peterson in this fight. I think Pena will have success in the first round, but unless he gets Peterson out of there in the first round, I think he's going to slow. I think he's going to tire. I think he's, as you mentioned, this stylistically is a terrible matchup, as Peterson is a grinder, he's a battler, he makes fights scrappy and ugly, and that's the key to victory anyway against Pena, I think. But especially if he's depleted and his cardio isn't quite up to speed because of the weight cut. He's as you said, his strikes probably won't be as powerful because he won't be lifting the weights that he was at the heavier weight class. And yeah, I think Peterson might drop the first round, but from then on in, I think he's going to make this ugly, and I think he's just going to outwork Pena, and Pena's going to have his back against the fence. He's not going to be able to create space for any of those kicks or anything like that. And yeah, I think he's going to. I think it's going to be a really close fight, but again, I think he's going to come out on the losing end of the decision. So for that reason, I'm going with Steven Peterson to win this fight via decision.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Jussier Formiga versus Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, Man, I'm so excited for this fight, and I think
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
good
this is the
fight.
people's main event. I think it's very fair to say that it's going to be a fun fight. Both fighters are, doing really well right now. They're both dangerous in different areas. Formiga, we all know where he's dangerous. He's dangerous on the mat, but we see it time and time again where these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aces just struggle to get the fight to the mat. But Formiga's not one of them guys. Formiga does tie up nicely. He'll hop the back if he needs to, but he does have nice trips and leg reaps and things like that just to get the fight to the mat to where he needs it to be. Figueiredo has shown a weakness in his takedown defense. We've seen that in the Jared Brooks fight. Jared Brooks took him down 7 times. That was a robbery, by the way. Jared Brooks won that fight. I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. I've got no idea. Well, I do have an idea. Figueiredo was in Brazil, but the thing is, though, with that takedown defense weakness, which I've just mentioned, it's a slightly different technique to what Formiga uses. So Jared Brooks was getting the doubles and lifting him and slamming him. The standard wrestling takedowns that you see, but Formiga
Yeah.
doesn't have that that NCAA wrestling, that wrestling pedigree background. So, like I say, he uses the trips and the reaps and stuff like that. And it's going to be interesting to see how Deiveson defends against those types of takedowns, because that isn't something that we've seen anybody have a lot of success with. Now, if Formiga did have this NCAA background and the standard wrestling background as what like Jared Brooks has, for example, we could make the assumption that he's going to probably get taken down very easily, and Formiga will roll and probably submit him because of Formiga's BJJ credentials. But he doesn't, so it's almost interesting to see if Formiga can get Deiveson down. If he can get him down, can he hold him down? If he can't hold him down, can he keep getting him down? There's a lot of question marks here and stuff that I don't think is going to be answered until after this fight. But Deiveson, on the other end, he's got a wrestling background. Not obviously, it's a Brazilian wrestling background. It's not, again, your NCAA background, but he's got good top control, heavy top control. He's got good ground and pound. He's got power on the feet for a flyweight as well. The dude hits hard. He hits in combinations. He's aggressive. He comes forward. He won't stop coming forward. So this is going to be a ridiculous clash of styles, because Formiga wants to fight close to get a hold of him, and Deiveson is going to want to get close to him to put hands on him. So it's perfect. This is perfect matchmaking. Like, I'm so intrigued and excited to how it's going to go down, and one of these guys is going to rocket up the division with a winner. I think that's going to be Deiveson. I just feel that if Formiga can't get him flat on his back and really work on him, I think Formiga's going to struggle in this fight, and he's going to be susceptible to being knocked out because of the power that Deiveson possesses. If Formiga can get him down and keep him down, or just get him down with regularity and stay on top for sort of 30 seconds, 60 seconds at a time, he could win rounds via that method, or even catch a submission on a scramble or something. So that's an avenue to victory for sure. But I just think Deiveson's going to pop back up. I think he's going to be the stronger guy in the cage. So when Formiga does tie up with him, I think Deiveson will be able to get the underhooks in. I think he will be able to muscle Formiga off him, and I think he'll be able to get strikes off, combinations, and ultimately I think that's how he's going to win the fight, and I think he's going to knock Formiga out. I really like Deiveson. I think he's a raw talent. Not raw as in green, by the way. I just think he's a pure talent is probably a better way of putting it. He's athletic. He's big for the division. He's imposing. He's well-rounded. He's good everywhere. He's not better on the mat than Formiga, but he's good enough to survive and to get back up. And I just think he's the full package, man. And I would love to see a fight at 125 pounds between Henry Cejudo and Deiveson, because it would be a good style clash for sure. Like I say, I think Deiveson's going to win this fight. There is also a lot of, as I've already mentioned, questions that can't be answered until after this fight, but I'm taking Deiveson to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. John, who have you got?
I'm picking exactly the same as you in this fight. I'm going for Deiveson Figueiredo as well. As we know, he's the better striker. Formiga's world is on the mat. He has got decent takedowns. He's got a nice. He uses a nice single leg entry to then switch to the clinch and then go for the trip takedown. We saw that against Sergio Pettis. He used that technique on a couple of occasions. He'll jump on that leg and then quickly switch it up and trip you, and that's how he gets the fight down into his world. And for Figueiredo, as you mentioned, he hasn't got particularly great defensive wrestling, but I think his defensive wrestling is good enough to stuff enough of Formiga's takedown attempts to be able to keep the fight standing long enough to inflict some damage on the feet. Figueiredo, as you say, has got good offensive wrestling. We saw that in his last fight against Moraga. Moraga did clip him and wobbled him slightly, but straight away he clinched up, took the fight to the mat, and then landed some of that brutal ground and pound that you talked about. And yeah, I just think Figueiredo is just the far more well-rounded mixed martial artist, and for a guy in the 125 division, as you said, he really packs a punch. I mean, stoppage wins in 3 of his last 4 fights, all in the UFC, and he has got that one-punch stoppage power that we don't see from many guys in the 125 division, and yeah, as you said, and I've just mentioned. I just think he'll be able to keep this fight standing long enough to be able to eventually catch Formiga with something. Now, I think Formiga, once he starts getting lit up on the feet and he feels the power of Figueiredo, I think he'll start to shoot for those takedowns a lot more frequently and not set them up well. And then eventually, I think he'll leave himself exposed going for one of those takedowns. I think we might see Deiveson uppercut when Formiga goes in for the shot, and we've seen him utilise that technique in a couple of his fights. I think we saw it in the Moraga fight, and he tried it against Jared Brooks as well, obviously because he was shooting with the wrestling. But yeah, I think Figueiredo will land. He'll land heavy when Formiga can't take him down and he starts to feel the hands. I think he'll get a bit desperate with some of his shots, which will open him up to a counter. And I think Figueiredo's going to put the lights out. So I'm also going with Deiveson Figueiredo to win this fight via stoppage. I think it will come in the second round. And then, yeah, as you said, that would be one hell of a fighting versus Henry Cejudo. That would be, I'm all down for that.
Absolutely. And in the next fight of the night, we've got John Makdessi versus Jesus Pinedo. Now, unfortunately, we've lost a fight on this card. You know, we were originally supposed to see Nasrat Haqparast versus John Makdessi and Chris Gruetzemacher against Jesus Pinedo, but weirdly, on like the same day, Haqparast and Gruetzemacher both pulled out of their fights injured, I believe, and the UFC just acted quickly, you know, and made John Makdessi and Jesus Pinedo, which makes absolute sense. So we have lost a fight, but we've gained a new stylistic fight, which is going to be cool to see, and it's going to be interesting to see Jesus Pinedo coming into this fight with a full camp. Obviously, his last fight against Devin Powell was short notice. It was also his debut as well. So you could make a lot of... He won the fight. You know, you're not going to take that away from him. He didn't light the world up, though, or light the cage up, or light Powell up. As much as what we saw in his tape, you know, in tape, he was exciting. He was wild, both on the feet, off his back, on the mat. You know, he looks like a really, really good guy. Now, like I say, one or two things could have happened. Either A, he faced a massive step up in competition and suddenly his whole game was a lot different. Or B, like I say, he just didn't have the preparation, he didn't have the full training camp, and his performance suffered because of that. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get out of Pinedo in this fight. But, again, I keep mentioning it, fundamentals. John Makdessi has fundamentals. He's got a good kickboxing game. He's got fucking godlike takedown defense. So I'd be shocked if Pinedo got him down. I think Makdessi's probably got some of the best takedown defense in MMA period, right? So I'm not I'm not convinced Pinedo gets him down even if he wants to. So I do see this fight primarily taking place on the feet, and I think Makdessi's just got the better. He's a veteran. He's got the better striking. He's got, like I say, a nice kickboxing background. I think if Pinedo comes forward and he's rushing, he's wild, he's aggressive, I think Makdessi will handle that pretty well. The only time we haven't seen Makdessi handle that sort of flash very well was against Venata. But listen, that was, in my opinion, a one-off spin kick that he got caught with and put his lights out that probably won't happen again. So yeah, I think Makdessi is going to school Pinedo on the feet. I'm not sure how Pinedo beats him unless he starches him, unless he knocks him out like Venata does. I think Makdessi is just going to get the better reads inside the cage if he needs to, make the better in-cage adjustments, just using that veteran experience just to pull away in the fight on the scorecards. I don't think Makdessi is going to finish him. And like I say, I think he's just that savvy veteran that's just going to use his experience and look good in the judge's eyes. So, yeah, unless Pinedo catches him with a hard kick to the face or a hard shot to the face, hard punch, hard combination, I think Makdessi's going to win. So I'm going to take John Makdessi to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this breakdown pretty short and sweet because I'm following in your footsteps with John Makdessi. I think he's the far better striker than Pinedo. I think his arsenal of strikes, especially his kicks. I mean, he'll utilise spinning kicks. We saw that fantastic finish earlier on in his career against I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but yeah, he will utilise his he's got a taekwondo background if I remember correctly, and yeah, he'll really utilise those kicks and maintain distance with them, and then they allow him and free up his hands, and once he's thrown the spinning kicks to the bodies, the hard body shots, the leg kicks, the hands of the opponent starts to drop, and that opens up the head kicks, and as you said, he's got very good takedown defensive early. He's very hard to get to the mat, so I'd be very surprised as well if Pinedo could get him to the mat and keep him there. So yeah, for that reason, I think the fight is going to be played out entirely on the feet. Whether he'll be able to finish Pinedo, I'm not sure. I mean, he hasn't got any finishes on his record since Shane Campbell back in 2015. So for that reason, I'm going to go with John Makdessi to win via decision. I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable win. I think, as I said, I think he'll be able to dominate on the feet throughout the entirety of the 3 rounds. He's tough. He's hard to take down. I just can't see a way that Pinedo is going to win this fight unless he catches Makdessi with something off guard and finishes him. But yeah, I'm going with John Makdessi to win this fight by decision.
And just off topic slightly as well, I was actually very considering betting Makdessi as a plus 200, plus 250 underdog against Nasrat Haqparast as well. I'm quite high on Makdessi from what I've seen lately. So yeah, just off topic, he was a massive underdog against Nasrat, and I don't think that was entirely justified. But we move on. Yeah. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Curtis Razor Blaydes versus Justin Willis, and this is again another fun fight, and I think it's going to be really intriguing to see if Justin Willis can be taken down, because it's something that we don't know yet. We haven't seen anybody really take him down and dominate, and the dude's fucking huge. Like, he's one of maybe a handful of fighters in the heavyweight division that actually has to cut weight to make the 265-pound limit. And fun fact, he's supposed to have been a short notice debut a couple of years ago, and he signed the contract. He said he was going to fight, but then realised that he'd left his weight cut too late and he wasn't going to make weight, so he withdrew opposed to actually stepping on the scales overweight, which is mental when you think about it. He's like a 300-pound dude, so it's going to be really interesting to see if Curtis Blaydes can. Well, I think Curtis Blaydes is going to be able to close the distance. I don't think Willis's movement is elusive enough to keep Blaydes at range. If Blaydes wants to close the distance, just like he did with Mark Hunt, they're quite similar fighters in that fashion, Willis and Hunt, in regards to the movement and stuff like that. But the difference is Hunt had that absolute. I mean, every fighter at heavyweight has got that one punch knockout power, but Mark Hunt, I don't need to explain how that's any different with Mark Hunt. We all know Mark Hunt. So Blaydes had that to worry about. Whereas, yes, he does have the one-punch knockout power to worry about from Willis. If he catches him clean on the chin, he could cause problems. Although, even though Blaydes was finished by Ngannou, I think it could have been there was an argument there that it was a potential early finish. I'm not going to say it was a robbery or anything like that. And in my opinion, I actually think it was a good stoppage. But I do see the argument for a premature stoppage. But Blaydes has got a fucking insane chin for a heavyweight, man. Like, I'd be surprised if Willis knocks Curtis Blaydes out in this fight, then Ngannou has ruined Curtis Blaydes. Fact, because I don't see it. If Ngannou didn't knock him clean out, I don't think Willis is going to knock him clean out. But I don't think Blaydes particularly has that to worry about to close the distance. So I think he can get that distance closed. I think he can get his hands locked behind Willis's bum. I think he can get him down to the mat. But again, it's interesting because we haven't seen Willis get ragged about like that. So trains at AKA, Cain Velasquez, Daniel Cormier. So you'd assume that his wrestling is on point. So again, just like I mentioned with the Formiga and Deiveson fight, there's a couple of question marks that we won't see answered until after the fight. On the feet striking, I think it's very even. I think Blaydes has got an underrated striking game. We just didn't see it in his last fight just because he was shit scared of getting punched by Ngannou, which is fair. Talk to Overeem. I'm sure he'll back that up. But yeah, I think the striking is going to be pretty even. I think they could both have success striking. I think Blaydes is the slightly faster guy, the slightly better mover. For that reason, I think Blaydes may edge on the striking slightly if it was to be a 15-minute kickboxing fight. But ultimately, I do think Curtis Blaydes closes the distance. I do think that he has the ability to take Justin Willis down. I think Blaydes has got the ability to take anybody down in that heavyweight division. His wrestling is so good. So although we haven't seen Willis on his back, that doesn't mean to say he can't get put on his back. And he's definitely never fought a fighter with the wrestling of Curtis Blaydes inside a cage. So whether the fight stays striking or whether the fight does end up on the mat, I think Blaydes is going to win the fight. Whether it be a finish or not, I can only see a finish in this fight if it's Blaydes on top and he throws some ground and pound down at Willis, similar to what we saw in the Overeem fight, and he finishes Willis that way. If he doesn't get the ground and pound off and he does sort of lay and pray a little bit, or if he can't get him down and it does stay on the feet, I think it's going to go to a decision. And ultimately, that's what I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick Curtis Blaydes to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is going to be an intriguing matchup. I mean, Justin Willis, I'm still unsure on the guy due to the fact that his level of opponent that he's faced so far hasn't particularly wowed me. Obviously, he got that decision win against James Mulheron in his UFC debut back in 2017. Then he beat Alan Crowder. And he didn't look great in the first. I know he was only the fight only lasted half a round, but he didn't look great early on in that fight. But then he did catch Crowder and got the finish. And then he got a unanimous decision against Chase Sherman as well. And all three of those guys, I'm not particularly high on. I mean, Mulheron and Chase Sherman both out of the UFC as well now. And then obviously in his last fight, he beat Mark Hunt. He did land some shots and then was pretty elusive. And Mark Hunt was just kind of throwing that one big overhand. But mentally, I don't think Mark Hunt was in that fight because obviously, as we saw, I think he was the last fight of his UFC career. he's got beef with the UFC anyway, so he wasn't overly keen on helping them out as a company, and he kind of that kind of shone through in some of his last fights. He didn't look the Mark Hunt of old, and so yes, I'm still unsure as to just what level Justin Willis is at, but with regards to Curtis Blaydes, I think we know what level this guy's at, and I think his level can get even higher. Obviously, we saw him lose very early on against Francis Ngannou. That's the second time he's lost to Ngannou. He's only 2 losses on his record to Ngannou, and that's nothing really to be overly upset about. I mean, we all know how hard Ngannou hits. That first fight as well was a doctor stoppage. I mean, Blaydes took the shots from Ngannou and kept coming forward and kept going. It was the doctors in between rounds that stopped the fight because of the eye injury.
It was quite funny how Blaydes was trying to count the fingers with his hand when the doctor was putting like 3 fingers up. He was trying to count the fingers because he couldn't see.
Yeah, he's going using every sneaky little trick in the book to keep the fight going, wasn't he? But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, I mean, he looked good in that fight against Alistair Overeem. Landed some brutal ground and pound in the guard to win that and finish that. He also defeated Mark Hunt. He defeated Alexei Olenek as well back at UFC 217 in that bizarre finish. He's a very strong wrestler. He's durable. I don't think Willis. He does hit hard. Obviously, he's a heavyweight. One shot can put you out. We saw that against Crowder. But as I mentioned, I'm still unsure about him, and I don't know whether his striking is that fantastic. It's nowhere near on the level of Francis Ngannou, who's the only guy to have finished Blaydes. And yeah, I don't see Willis landing enough strikes or big enough strikes to be able to put Blaydes away, because as you mentioned, he's got a pretty granite chin, and unless Ngannou's done some serious lasting damage to it, I think Blaydes will be able to keep the fight standing, and he'll be able to keep standing his fight and not go down from any of Willis's strikes. And yeah, I think Blaydes will be able to grind this fight out. I think it'll be fought at quite a slow pace, as you'd imagine for 2 big heavyweights. But I think Blaydes will be able to hold his own on the feet. Maybe later on in the fight, he'll be able to clinch up and take the fight to the mat and spend some time on top. And ultimately, I think he's just going to grind out a decision win against Justin Willis and get the victory. I don't think he's going to get a finish. I mean, Willis only loss his VAR strikes. That was his very first professional fight back in 2012. He himself looks like he's got a decent chin. It hasn't really been tested. Hunt didn't really land anything of great significance on his chin, but yeah, I don't see, unless, as you mentioned, it's via ground and pound, and he gets the fight down. He's just relentless with it. I don't see this fight being stopped, and yeah, I'm going with Curtis Blaydes to win this fight decision.
And in the main event of the evening, we've got a bit of a strange main event, really. We've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Anthony Pettis. This is Pettis' welterweight debut. Obviously, Pettis, most of his career spent at lightweight, spent a bit of time down at featherweight, and it's not really worked out for him. But I don't think it's. I think it's a rushed and well, not a rushed, because I don't think there was any need for it, but it's a very forced move up to welterweight, and I honestly don't understand it. Like, maybe we'll hear more about Pettis moving up on media day and stuff this week, and via interviews and things like that. But I honestly don't understand it, because I feel that he's moved up because he may think that he can't win a lot of fights in the lightweight and the featherweight division, and this is me just speculating now. I don't think he's got any business at featherweight, you know. I think that's a little bit too much of a cut, especially after a fighter's had 30 fights. You know, he's only 32, but it's miles on the clock opposed to miles on the age. But like, fighting guys like Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, Edson Barboza, Eddie Alvarez, Rafael Dos Anjos, these are all his last wins, and every single name I've mentioned there is a legit world-class fighter. Some are a little bit more, digress than others like Rafael dos Anjos and Eddie Alvarez, but they're still fucking good fighters. And I just feel that Pettis has thought, you know what, I've lost to Tony Ferguson and now it's time for a change. I don't really know where to go. I think that Tony Ferguson fight he maybe thought was his ticket to a title fight. I don't know, but yeah, it's a strange move up. I've got no idea how he's going to look at welterweight. I don't think anybody can sit and break down this fight and claim that they know exactly what Anthony Pettis is going to look like. I think he's going to look, for his size, he's going to look huge at welterweight. I think he's going to fill out massively. He's going to look ripped. But I mean, look at who else looked massive at welterweight in Conor McGregor, and he didn't have a gas tank longer than 7.5 minutes. There's a lot of red flags. There's a lot of question marks in regards to what we're actually going to see. And like I say, I don't know. What I do expect from Anthony Pettis, I don't expect anything less than at this point in his career, he's taken a move up to 170 to just coming out like a bull and really putting it on Wonderboy, because Pettis isn't daft. He's been in this game for years. He's got a good fight IQ. He understands the game. He's with Duke Rufus, who also reads the game really well. And they know if they don't put it on Wonderboy and don't get in his face, he's going to get picked apart at range, at distance, for 5 rounds, unless, he gets caught, but potentially for 5 rounds and get 50-24. 50-45. Maths completely off that. So yeah, he's just going to get schooled over 5 rounds. So he has to come forward. He has to put it on Wonderboy, and in my opinion, I think he has to finish Wonderboy, because if he doesn't finish Wonderboy, I do see him tiring. I've got a funny, we see it a lot with the older fighters that are moving up, and they, in any fighter, actually, it doesn't make a difference whether you're old or not. If you're moving up, it's going to take a fight or two just for you to really feel what your body's like in that division. But the problem is, he can't take that time off in this fight against Wonderboy, because Wonderboy is so technical and so good at just keeping distance and just picking apart. That's it. That's his game. That's everything that surrounds his game in MMA, and he hasn't got that time in this fight. So I think he's going to go in. I think he's going to go in hard. I think he's trying to get Wonderboy out of there. I don't think he gets Wonderboy out of there. I think by halfway through the second or the third round, I think we're going to really see Pettis starting to tire. Wonderboy will take over from that point. Wonderboy may have also won one of the first couple of rounds or both. So I think Wonderboy is going to win the fight. Unless, like I say, Pettis catches him. I don't see Pettis being able to take him down to the mat and really work on him. I don't think we've ever really seen anybody do that to Wonderboy, off the top of my head. So I don't see that. And like I say, he's a great kickboxer. Obviously, that's what he's known for. Pettis, that is, in regards to his kicks and his variety of kicks that he's got and his aggression. So there is a possibility he does catch Wonderboy. I just don't see it happening, and I do see Pettis fading. But again, I can't be 100% confident in that. It's a weird one for me. We don't know what we're going to get with Pettis at 170 pounds. So I'm going to take Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to win. I'm going to take him to win by decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, as you said, this is a pretty bizarre main event, and not a fight that I thought we'd be breaking down, especially at this point in both the guys' careers, and the fact that Pettis was just coming off that really entertaining fight back in October against Tony Ferguson at lightweight. But yeah, it's intriguing for sure, man, and as you said, we don't really know what we're going to see from Anthony Pettis in this fight. Is the move up going to do him good? Is he going to struggle with his cardio, as you said? How's he going to cope with fighting a naturally bigger and taller guy? I know that Wonderboy isn't the tallest of welterweights, but he's long. He's got a long reach, and especially with that karate stance and that karate style, that makes him seem even longer than he is. And Wonderboy Thompson, I think he gets not not underrated is the right word, but I think because of obviously the fact that he lost to Darren Till in his last fight, and then a couple of fights before that he lost to Woodley, and then he had that draw. I think people forget just some of the wins that he has on his record. I mean, the Darren Till fight was his last fight, and that was back in May last year. Arguably, a lot of people think that he won that fight. And then before that, he absolutely schooled Masvidal back at UFC 217. I think he took a 30-26 on one of the judges' scorecards in that fight. People are talking about Jorge Masvidal fighting for the title after what he did to Darren Till at the weekend. And like I said, Thompson absolutely schooled him. Masvidal couldn't get close to him in their fight. Then he lost that majority decision against Tyron Woodley in their second outing, which was really close. First outing was the draw, again, which he arguably could have won. And then before that, he beat Rory MacDonald and Johnny Hendricks. I mean, the guy's fought some absolute beasts, and arguably, we could be sitting here talking today about Stephen Thompson having 0 defeats on his record. That's how close his losses have been as well. The draw against Woodley, and then the loss to Woodley and Till. Sorry, I am excluding the loss to Matt Brown. So one loss on his record. But yeah, I think Pettis is going to have a really hard time in this fight. I think he's going to have to be, like you say, he's going to have to be really aggressive to be able to get on the inside and try and land on Thompson, which is what Thompson wants his opponents to do. He struggles more so against the likes of Darren Till, because Darren Till is somewhat of a counter striker, and he showed that in their fight. Tyron Woodley was very hesitant, and I know a lot of fans weren't impressed with the title fight between those two. But because Thompson is a counter striker, and Woodley really knew that and refused to throw anything that would put him in jeopardy. But for Pettis to win, he's going to have to be aggressive and get on the inside, because, like you mentioned, otherwise Thompson will just easily work his way to a 50-45 from the outside, just landing strikes, constantly moving, and Pettis not really doing anything. And for that reason, I believe that is why Stephen Thompson is going to win this fight. I think when Pettis does get aggressive, I think Thompson will be able to land on him. That's what karate is all about. It's about counter-striking and catching your opponents as they come in. And yeah, I think the step up in weight as well could tire Pettis out. I mean, he hasn't had a particularly great length of time between the two fights as well. It's only about 5 months since he had that war with Tony Ferguson, and yeah, if he's putting on a high pace, and he could fade after a round and a half, and it's going to be a tough 5-round fight then. And it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Thompson get a win late in the 4th round. I know Thompson isn't a particularly huge finisher. He's not a massive power puncher or anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me if you just wore Pettis down. If Pettis is out of gas and he has thrown everything at Thompson in the first couple of rounds, I mean, come round 3 and 4, then it's going to be really tough for him. And if Thompson can land something and then back him up against the fence and kind of land a flurry, and the ref may jump in and stop it, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a Thompson victory via decision. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 49-46s across the board. As you said, Pettis maybe taking the first round, and then Thompson kind of kicking into gear from then. Pettis slowly tiring. Thompson can go 5 rounds. We know he can. And yeah, I'm going with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to win this fight via decision.
And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdowns, guys. But we move on. Welcome to the hot topics portion. So the first thing I'd like to kick this off is the discussion with one half of the main event, Anthony Pettis. We've already discussed him a little bit in the breakdown. But John, you wanted to talk about Pettis, so tell us what's on your mind, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about where Anthony Pettis is in his career. Where does his career go from here? What weight class suits him? Is he going to be one of these guys now that we see like a Donald Cerrone, like a BJ Penn, just taking fights at different weight classes, putting on entertaining scraps? He may win some, he may lose some. I know it's hard to believe that he's only won 3 of his last 9 fights. But all those fights, I mean, the Dustin Poirier fight was a war, and that was really entertaining. The Max Holloway title fight was fun. Edson Barboza, like you mentioned, Tony Ferguson, that was arguably one of the fights of the year. And is that what Anthony Pettis is now? Is he a fun fighter? Is he like a Justin Gaethje type character who'll just go in there? He may lose, he may get finished, but he'll certainly just stand there and trade with you in the process and take that 50 G's fight of the night bonus with him as he's been carted off to hospital post fight, or do you think he can? I mean, he's only 32 years old. I know he has got some fight miles on the clock, but can he settle down in the division and make a run for a title, or is that done now? Has his time gone? Has he's been the champion previously? There are guys that have evolved and are just better than him, so he's just a fun fighter. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? I personally think it is that. I think he's going to be just a fun fighter, one of those guys. I don't like to use the term gatekeeper because I think he's slightly higher than gatekeeper standard. When you mentioned the fight breakdown, some of the guys he's fought, Ferguson in his last fight, Poirier, Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Edson Barboza, Eddie Alvarez, Rafael dos Anjos, they're more than gatekeeper fights. They're top guys in the divisions, but that's where I see his career now. I just see him being a fun guy that'll throw down with anybody and win or lose. He'll be around for some time just because he puts on entertaining fights, and he may lose a couple of fights to some of the top guys, and then he'll fight someone slightly lower down the rankings, and he is technically all round better fighter than them, and he'll get the win, and then it'll just be a rinse and repeat process of these fun scraps. But what are your thoughts on it? Where do you think his future lies? Do you think he's done as a genuine title challenger?
I think he goes up to middleweight. I'm joking, obviously.
And then all the way up from there.
No, do you know what? I think with you mentioning Cerrone's name in that discussion there, I see exactly that. I think he's a fighter that I think he could have success at 170. I just think that the last person that you should be fighting is your 170 debut, moving up in weight, is Wonderboy, because like I said in the breakdown, you need a fight that's going to give you a little bit of time as well, just so you can take a little bit of time and sort of feel your body out and feel how you're going to be up a weight class for the first time in your 30 fight career, But he's not going to get that time against Wonderboy. If he does, Wonderboy will just start picking at him. So I do think he can have success at 170. I just don't think it's against Wonderboy. I think he loses this fight. But yeah, I think he could keep bouncing around divisions. I don't think we see him go back down to featherweight. I think that's too much of a cut for him where he is right now in his career. Like I say, a 30-fight veteran isn't going to start choosing that lower weight class when he's bouncing between three. So I think he's going to be like Cerrone, moving in between lightweight and welterweight and just taking the fights that make sense. And ultimately, I don't think Pettis is done. I think he's, I've said this time and time again over multiple podcasts, he's a fighter that gets so disrespected and it's unbelievable. Not for what he's done. Like, nobody disrespects that because the dude's a legend of the sport and I believe is another fighter that's going to enter the Hall of Fame by the time he's retired. But just the fact that the disrespectful of him right now, like he's washed up and he's done, he's not. He's still a very talented fighter. He's a very dangerous fighter, and we saw that against Michael Chiesa. Yes, he got beat by Dustin Poirier, but listen, Dustin Poirier is fucking unbelievable. He's a monster, and he was doing okay in that fight. He nearly caught Poirier a couple of times with triangles. One of them, you could argue, the referee stopped the fight because of the cut just as he was locking one up, but we saw in previous times in that fight that the blood was just so slippy for him to lock it up. So he was doing well against Poirier, but like I say, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, Barboza, Alvarez, Dos Anjos, all these fighters that I've just mentioned have beaten Pettis in their prime. So not when they're digressed, in their prime. He's only lost in the UFC to the best of the best, and he's still got it, man. He's still going to win fights. Where he goes, I think, in my opinion, what he should be doing right now is exactly what Cerrone's doing. Cerrone may say that he's got title aspirations and stuff like that, but realistically, he's not going to get another title shot. And I feel the same for Anthony Pettis as well. Just do what Cerrone's doing. Pick the fun fights. Fuck me, at this stage in your career, pick the fights where you think it is going to be fight of the night. Pick the fights where you can see yourself flash knocking somebody out or really steamrolling someone. Keep racking up those 50k bonuses. Bonus. Because by the time you retire in 3, 4, 5 years' time, you're going to have a nice wad of cash to sit on. So, for me, yeah, I don't see Pettis declining just yet. I don't see him getting a title shot. Just keep taking the good fights, keep taking the fun fights, and keep chasing that bonus.
Definitely, man.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is short notice UFC debuts. So this is one that I've picked. And actually, the reason why I've picked it is because it's becoming something that we see very, very often. And I think it's actually one of the best avenues for fighters to get into the UFC, because if you come in on a short notice debut, the chances are, and we've seen it time and time again, I'll list a couple of examples in a minute, is you will get a contract after that fight, win or lose. So you've got a free pass to go in there, unless you look absolutely terrible. I mean, who's that kid that Joey Alvarez that just fought Ismagulov?
Yeah, a couple of weeks back.
Yeah,
and he looked terrible.
Absolutely terrible.
Spanish guy. Yeah.
But do you know what?
Yeah.
He just signed a 4-fight contract with the UFC.
Madness.
Unbelievable. If that's not an advocate of just fucking take the fight, even if you're fighting Brock Lesnar as a flyweight, take the fight, because you're gonna get another fight in the UFC, and you're doing the UFC a favour, and I love that from the UFC. You any fight that steps in on short notice, you're really doing the UFC a favour, and they repay you every time. And in that Joel Alvarez's case, you got a 4-fight deal for one of the worst, I don't mean any disrespect, but one of the worst performances I've seen from any fighter in the UFC. The fact that he was terrible, he was bad technically, he just didn't do anything for 15 minutes. It was crazy to see. But yeah, it's a great avenue for fighters to get into UFC, and like I say, we see it time and time again. So the list I've got, Justin Willis, I know he wasn't a short notice, but he was supposed to be. He tried to make the weight, and he was honest with the UFC, and rather than weighing in and causing more problems and stuff like that, I think the UFC respected that from him, and they got him back in again. Jesus Pinedo was a short notice fight against Devin Powell. Laureano Starapoli was a short notice fight against Hector Aldana. Obviously, he won. See, that's the other side of it. If you come in short notice and you win, and this is the common theme: Justin Willis won, Pinedo won, Starapoli won. The next one on the list, Nordia beating Prazeres on your UFC debut, is fucking unbelievable. That is an unbelievable win to come in on short notice and take someone out that's been tearing through multiple divisions. So, man, reap the rewards. You either lose and you probably get a couple of fight contracts, or you win and suddenly, bang, you're straight in the top 20. You're in the mix, and you're now settled. You've got a good career. You've got a win in the UFC. That means the UFC can't get rid of you for at least another 2 or 3 fights. So there's no downside to it. A guy that's done it this week, Ryan MacDonald. Unfortunately, I think that that's not going to end so well for him, but it's going to be an L for him. He's going to learn a shit ton from it, because he's a 10-0 undefeated professional fighter at like 22, 23 years old. So he's going to learn a shit ton from taking an L. He's going to learn a shit ton from being in there with a veteran striker in Gutierrez. And he's going to get another fight in the UFC, no matter what happens. Unless, he slaps Sean Shelby or something after the fight, he's going to get another fight. So just... I love it. I think it's a good avenue for fighters. I don't see a downside for a fighter saying no. If the UFC call you up and say, will you fight next week for me? Just say yes. You might not be in shape. You might lose the fight, but you're going to get another fight. You're going to get that full camp. You're going to get options. You're going to get more sponsors from it. You're going to get the Reebok payout. What's your thoughts, man? Surely it's the same, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you wholeheartedly on that one. That I can't remember many occasions where guys come in, just had one fight, and come in on short notice, made a debut, one fight, and then they're done, and they've been dropped from the UFC. I mean, if I don't know if you can think of anyone off the top of your head, or if anyone listening, if they can think of anyone and want to drop a comment about it, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of anyone off the top of my head that has come in short notice, lost, and then the UFC has said sorry, we're not interested. But yeah, as you said, man, just take the fight. It's pretty much a freebie, because as you said, on almost every occasion I can think of, they get a second fight at least. Obviously, you mentioned Alvarez got a 4-fight deal. He may lose his second fight and look terrible and they cut him, but you're still getting that second fight. You're still getting a second chance to. You've got your foot in the door, and that's your opportunity. So go in there. As you said, you may not have had a particularly good camp or any real camp at all. You may not be feeling in great shape, but go in there and just put it all on the line. I mean, if you put on a fun fight as well, even if you lose, that can serve you in even better stead. I mean, Lando Venata's a good example. He came in short notice, if I remember rightly, against Tony Ferguson.
Really fucking took
and man, again, he nearly took him out, and that fight was really, really entertaining. And then he went on to lose, I want to say 4 straight, but then signed like a 4-fight deal after the last fight, and he's still there. And then obviously got that win in his most recent fight.
I think he knocked Makdessi out straight after Ferguson. Yes, yeah. And then
he got a couple of wins, didn't he? Or it might have just been the Makdessi win, or he might have got a couple of wins. But then he went on that 4-fight streak, and everyone thought, oh, now it'd be done. But because of his style as well really helped, but obviously as soon as you saw that fight against Tony Ferguson, he put it all on the line. He gassed out in the second round. I mean, he emptied the tank in the first round, nearly finished Ferguson. He gassed out badly in the second and got finished. But
he probably knew he was going to gas out. He probably knew he was in bad shape. So he went out there and, like you said, put it on the line, got an exciting fight, and took the L.
Exactly, and his names were on people's lips then. Eyes running for his next fight. Did you see that guy who nearly finished Tony Ferguson? He came in on a couple of weeks' notice. Never heard of him before, but man, he nearly finished him. Let's check him out in his next fight. And straight away, you've got a bit of a name for yourself as well. So I'm all for it. Jump straight in there, man. If they offer me some money to jump in there, man, I'll jump in there this weekend. Fly me over to Nashville. I'll take the L after 10 seconds and give me that second shot.
As long as there's a pizza waiting for me outside the cage or a hospital bed, I think is more important.
Yeah, definitely. That was being a bit too optimistic, wasn't it? I think if you saw me fight once in the UFC, that would be it, and you'd all be writing RIP on my Twitter timeline. So
I'd visit you.
I'll take that one back, but I'll take that one back.
And finally, as always, we're going to discuss the potential fights that could fight the night. Obviously, we didn't do it last week, but I think the week before that was me anyways. But John, tell us your fight of the night and your 2 performances of the night.
Yeah, I'm finding it hard to pick fights of the night and performance of the night actually in this one, because I honestly think there'll be so many decisions in this. I mean, I'm looking through every fight and all the fights that we broke down, pretty much all of them. I think we said we would go to a decision, bar 1 or 2. I'm going with Figueiredo to get a performance of the night bonus. I think he's going to finish Formiga. So that's one of the performance of the night bonuses. I did pick Marlon Vera as well to finish Frankie Saenz, so I'm going to have to go with him for the other one. Fight of the night. It's a tough one, man. I think I think he might go to John Makdessi against Pinedo. You know, I think that could be a pretty interesting scrap, or Formiga against Figueiredo. I think that'll be an interesting fight as well. But I'm going to go with Makdessi against Pinedo. I think that'll be a fun fight. I mean, both like to throw down from what we saw in Pinedo's debut. He's not afraid to exchange, and we know Makdessi isn't. I think that'll be a pretty fun fight. I think Bryce Mitchell against Bobby Moffett actually as well could be pretty fun, full of scrambles and things like that. But I'm going to go with the John Makdessi fight. I'm going to go with that for fight of the night.
Cool. Well, for me, I'm going Deiveson Figueiredo. I think he's going to get a performance of the night. I also think Chris Gutierrez is going to get a performance of the night as well. And my fight of the night, one that you mentioned on your list, Bryce Mitchell and Bobby Moffett. I just think that's going to be a ton of fun to watch. Scrambles, grappling, and then when they're on the feet, I think it could be a bit wild as well. So, Figueiredo and Gutierrez to take the performance of the night, and then Bryce Mitchell and Bobby Moffett to take the fight of the night. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. For the bets this week at UFC Nashville, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership options available on the Newsome MMA website too. Again, like I mentioned in the introduction to the podcast, there's going to be a special offer I'm going to roll out in the next couple of days that will last a couple of weeks. So if you want that early, just message me on any of my social channels or drop me an email and we can discuss that. So John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
As always, just check out my work. Newsome MMA. I'm hoping to have an interview with Bellator Birmingham headliner Tim Wilde in the next week or two.
Nice,
so, make sure you keep an eye out for that. I mean, many people, especially any guys listening over in the States, may not have heard of Tim Wilde, but this guy he's super fun to watch. He finishes fights and he comes to fight, man. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him. Spoken to him a few times before. He's a real good guy, so keep an eye out for that. As always, look out for my work on Fight Post. You can find that on Facebook. That's Fight Post MMA and Boxing, or you can find it on Twitter or fightpost.co.uk. There's always some good content on there, and I'll probably be putting out a predictions piece for Nashville on there as well. So keep an eye out for that. And then finally, as always, man, just hit me up on Twitter. I tried to fill your boots a little bit on Saturday. Obviously, you were doing your commentating gig. I always enjoy your tweets as the events unfold. So I tried to. Man. Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I tried to fill in slightly for you on that occasion, but yeah, I always love talking MMA with anyone who's interested, man, and got into a few back and forths on Saturday with regards to the Leon Edwards situation, because being a coach of mine, obviously I'm backing my boy Leon Edwards, but it's fun, man. It's all fun on Twitter. Nothing's taken to heart. It's all in good spirits, and I enjoy the back and forths and the debates and things. So yeah, man, just hit me up at MMA and me.
Awesome, man. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I'd like to mention Concussion Pro 1, who are partners here at Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 are the world's first dedicated concussion supplement, providing protection, recovery and benefits to the brain and body of professional athletes. If you go to concussionpro1.com, you can use promo code Newsome MMA15 for 15% off your order. The next mention is the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too, and at CBD Life UK, they have a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, and enjoy.